So as the Ukrainian flags were waved and the US political elite slapped themselves on the back for passing what at least looks like another $61 billion in aid for Ukraine, we've taken a closer look at how, when and where that money will supposedly be spent. And surprise, surprise, the reality doesn't really match the headlines.
A short time ago, the House of Representatives passed a crucial aid bill for Ukraine.
We begin in the United States, where lawmakers have just passed a crucial $61 billion aid package for Ukraine.
Vital funding needed to help Ukraine defend itself from Russia's invasion has just been approved in the House of Representatives.
And as just about everyone knows, or at least thinks, House Speaker Mike Johnson's bill provides $60.8 billion in aid to counter Russia. But a detailed analysis of where that cash will actually go reveals a fascinating, and if you're a supporter of the Ukrainian proxy war project, a very worrying reality. The vast majority won't get anywhere near the front lines. As you can see, just under $50 billion will go to defense spending for Ukraine. But that's a very broad term, with huge amounts being spent far from the front lines. And for the immediate use by Ukrainian military, let's break it down. Well, that's $50 billion spent, or at least supposedly to be spent, on the wider Ukrainian project. But that still leaves over $10 billion left that no one seems to know anything about. And while Western politicians celebrated the game-changer aid package, Russia's foreign ministry spokeswoman called out the reality of the so-called aid to Kiev.
As for the new U.S. military aid to Ukraine, about 1/4 of the nearly $61 billion in aid will be used for this purpose. And the needs of the Ukrainian military will be met on a credit basis, not gratuitously. The lion's share of the funds will remain in the United States. Pentagon Chief Lloyd Austin explained that about $50 billion would be directly invested in the U.S. defense industrial complex and would create jobs in more than 30 states.
So there we have it. Most of the cash for Speaker Johnson's heroic bill will never actually get to Ukraine, but will grease the wheels of the US military-industrial complex. So it's unsurprising that the Speaker himself isn't too eager to highlight this reality, preferring to play the role of a stand-up guy just doing the right thing for Ukraine. Meanwhile, the American top brass have no problem admitting that this is all about flushing cash into the US weapons factories.
By providing approximately $50 billion that will flow directly into our defense industrial base, this bill will create good American jobs in more than 30 states, even as it reinforces US long-term security. This legislation will make America more secure and save lives.
If Congress passes military aid for Ukraine and Israel, we won't write blank checks. We'd send military equipment from our own stockpiles, then use the money authorized by Congress to replenish those stockpiles by buying from American suppliers. That includes Patriot missiles made in Arizona, Javelin missiles made in Alabama, and artillery shells made in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Texas. We would be investing in America's industrial base, buying American products made by American workers, supporting jobs in nearly 40 states, and strengthening our own national security. We would help our friends while helping ourselves.
And of course, it's also worth remembering that the US has already pumped over $100 billion of its own taxpayers' cash into the failing Ukrainian project. The scale of the spending is truly astounding, with two programs operating to fund Kiev. One is the Presidential Authority, and the other is the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative, with one existing to replenish weapons and cash into the other. Since March 2022, $19 billion worth of orders have been financed into the US military-industrial complex under this initiative alone. And as the reality dawns that US aid to Ukraine is in fact more about funding America's own weapons manufacturers and their vast profits than defending Ukraine, some, even in Kiev, are beginning to wake up to the truth.
Having received crumbs from the table as a result of a long political game which costs us lives, territories, infrastructure, Ukraine has worked in the interests of specific political and lobbying groups in the United States. As further aid packages look unlikely, the American establishment's interest in this government is exhausted.
And of course, the devil is always in the detail, with less than $13 billion in military aid likely to actually even arrive in Ukraine at all. And with much of the long-promised American supplies not even manufactured yet, this doesn't bode well for Kiev's rapidly retreating and depleting army. That's as Zelensky, who refused to hold elections, will essentially become an illegitimate dictator when his term expires next month. Meanwhile, the truth is it could take years for any of the aid to arrive. And one thing Ukraine doesn't have right now is time.